Well, happy Father's Day. It's so great to celebrate all the dads that are watching. I hope you are barbecuing or you're eating, you're chowing down on whatever meal you have in front of you. I'm so excited. My name is Moses Khan. I'm one of the pastors here at All People's Church, and I get the job to host today's Father's Day panel. In just a second, I'm going to go through all the men that are with us. But listen, whatever food, whatever drink you have in hand, grab a seat, share this with any fathers that you might know so that they can be blessed out of the discussion that comes from today. Well, let's start on my right. Who do we have here?
Hi, I'm BLAIR MACDONALD. My wife Tracy and I have been married be 20 years this December. We've been coming to APC for about 2 years now. We've got a daughter, Kira, who's 13, and a son, Lucas, who's 11. I'm in software sales, and we live in Orillia, Ontario.
Hey, I'm the lead pastor here, and I've been here since 2005, and before that I was National Vice President for Shoppers Drug Mart, and so I've been married a lot of years, Blair, over 30, and I think I'm the only grandfather. That is really frightening. I'm the only grandfather on this panel. I have 2 daughters and an incredible grandson. Yeah.
Well, hello everyone, I'm Sean James. I've been at APC now since 2006. Been serving here for then. I'm the National Director of Sales for Auto Trader. I have one son and a wife, Alma, and she serves here as well. My son is Richard. He's 26, to be married in 3 months' time. You know, another challenge coming in my way, and soon to be grandfather, I hope. And yeah, it's been a great journey. It's been a good time serving at APC, and so I'm glad to be on the panel and share some wisdom about fatherhood.
Hey guys, I'm Luis Rauda, or Luis, whichever you prefer. I'm a project manager for a roofing company, and I've been coming to APC about 10 plus years, I think. I hope. It's been a long time. You know, I've been growing and building good relationships with Pastor Moses and Pastor Tony, so I'm excited to share with you guys today.
Awesome, incredible. So hopefully that helps you get to know some of the panel here today. We're going to start off with a difficult question, gentlemen, and that is, what would you consider to be the best Father's Day meal? What is the best Father's Day meal?
One I don't have to cook myself.
Yeah, there you go.
Do I have to say salad?
I'm a carnivore, so it's got to be, you know, medium. I'm a steak and potatoes guy, pretty simple. So steak potatoes, maybe some red peppers, some mushrooms, some asparagus.
And do you have to cook it?
I like to cook my steak.
Is this true? Like, gentlemen, do you enjoy the steak more if you cook it?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, fruit of the labors.
Pastor Tony says no. Pastor's like, cook it for me and bring it to me.
I just want to say, in my carb days, lasagna would be my, know, but in my non-carb days, it'd be steak.
Come on.
No, I don't have to cook it. No, it's okay.
I mean, what man doesn't like to grill?
That's right.
I mean, it's a man's right to grill.
Right? Come on. All right.
So, you know, for me, you know, a nice grilled lamb.
Lamb.
Lamb chop. I'm a lamb guy. I mean, you know, you can put a 20 ounce ribeye in front of me and a 5 ounce piece of lamb. I'll be going for the lamb.
That's very biblical.
Right?
I love it.
See, as much as I love meat, there's one thing that I would love cooked for me, and that's called pupusas.
Pupusas, come on.
Now, Sean's he probably can relate.
I'm an adopted Salvadorian.
He's an adopted Salvadorian. So, I mean, you eat that with some cabbage and some tomato sauce, and buddy, you're going to sleep.
You know what? I've been to your house. I've been to your house for pupusas.
That's right. See,
and
Pastor Tony's a living testimony here.
It's I gotta say, it's good stuff. Put you to sleep though. It'll put you to sleep, but it's good.
Like Thanksgiving.
Oh man, that's hilarious. All right, well, let's get into it. So, fatherhood, manhood. We live in, you know, some interesting times. We're just kind of talking a little bit even before the recording about kind of the days we we live in and the challenges we face as men and as you face as fathers. And so what would you say, this can be, general, but also personal. What would you say for you as fathers is a challenge in today's society that you felt living in today's society, in today's culture, with the things, with where things are going and how things are happening? What has been a challenge to you as a man, as a father, as someone of Christian values? What has been a challenge to you in today's society?
I'd say it's what's out there in general. So what's on TV, what my children are seeing in the internet. And it's content that everybody is seeing. So it's not just I can shield a certain amount from my kids, on the internet and on TV, but they're going to go to school and they're going to talk to their friends and their peers, or they're going to hang around with the kids in the neighborhood, and they're going to hear about, hey, did you hear about this show? And there's some really wonky, messed up shows, some confusing shows that are really attacking, the core fiber of decent society. So it's, how do you not just shield your kids, because you can't totally shield them from anything, but how do you instill in them good core values while they're being bombarded with all of this junk?
Yeah. So clearly there are things outside of your control, Blair, as a father. Yeah. And those are the things that are challenging. Those are the things that are hard to get your hands on.
Yeah, like I feel that, yes, we are bombarded with culture. However, I think it's important to remember to bring our kids to church. I remember Pastor saying a couple weeks ago, just bring them here. Even if they sit, if they cry, if they lay down on the seats, just bring them to church, right? That's something that I can resonate with, like just growing up. My dear good friend, Pastor Felipe Gonzalez, my dad always used to bring me to that church, and they'd be like, not services like this, like that 1 hour, 2 hours, that old school 3-4 hours. You come out there and you feel holy, like just I mean, but those are the memories that I have. And even when I was gone astray, like I came back to loving being here again, because I knew that the world is not my place. This is my place.
Yeah. That's good.
I guess, to answer that question, Pastor Moses, and building on what Blair's saying is, what's most concerning to me as a leader is how society in general, even like decent, good people, whether they're Christian or not, either they believe what's being said or they don't want to say anything. And so it's just this constant acceptance where I think we've lost common sense. And where people would be able to say, hey, this is right and this is wrong. Now it's, this blasé, acceptance, which I think feeds into these aggressive, radical thoughts and movements. And to me, that's very challenging. I've got a 2-year-old, my children are grown, but my grandson now, where I'm thinking, he's coming into a world that is completely upside down. And nobody seems to have any kind of problem with it, Sean. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I agree with you, Pastor Tony. Complacency seems to be what's ruining our society, because nobody wants to stand up for the moral truth. And there's been a wash of belief where people have beliefs, but they're almost afraid to believe in it because they feel they're going to be persecuted for it. And that complacency sets in, and we see it in the workplace, with people, and men, leaders, too afraid to call out behaviors that are not acceptable in the professional world, because they're afraid to be called out because of their beliefs. And I think that's really becoming indicative of our society as a whole, from the political streams right down into the society, where nobody wants to stand firm for their beliefs, whereas Christ tells us to stand firm, be steadfast. Yeah. And this wishy-washiness has becoming too rampant in our society.
And Sean, can I just say this? Not only can you not stand for your beliefs, is if you don't follow the norm, you're ostracized, you're attacked.
Yeah.
I mean, I get destroyed on social media all the time. It's like nobody can have a discussion anymore. Nobody can have hey, I don't see it that way. I don't believe that. This is my belief. No. If you don't follow their belief, so we live in a tolerant society is a complete lie. Yeah. They're tolerant
as long as you believe what they believe.
As long as you go along, then they're tolerant. Otherwise, you're going to see the intolerance, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Do you feel like as men, as fathers, talking about standards, truth, speaking up, do you feel like you have a role to play in that? Or is your role just subjected and restricted to your family? Or does it go beyond your family into society? Or is society hands off and then you're just called to take care of your family and that's about it?
No, I think we have a responsibility as men to be not culture changers, but to produce the culture that is acceptable. And to Pastor Tony's point, where if you don't believe what the masses believe, then you're ostracized. But wasn't that Jesus? He was ostracized because he didn't believe the culture that was in his day correct. So he came to set culture, and he was ostracized for it. So as Christian men, as leaders, as fathers, I think we have a responsibility to set the bone of culture.
Yeah.
And it starts in your home,
right?
And as a leader, as a priest or the leader of your home, I think you got to set the bone there so that your children, what does the Bible say in Proverbs 22:6? Train a child in the way they should go, and the way they get older, they not depart from it. Yeah. Well, we need to set that so that our children will follow that way. But even when we're in the public eye or in the society and communities, that we need to be set to the bone of Christ, to that plumb line, so that we can be that change agent, And I think you can't be one man at home and another man outside of the home.
Come on.
Yeah. I think there needs to be a consistency. You need to be the same man in your home, because authenticity speaks more than your words, and your children pick up on that. Yeah. Right?
I think taking it a step further with Sean, it's you're the head of your family's security detail. Mm-hmm. When you go out of the house, you have to be situationally aware. Mm-hmm. You have to know what's around you, who's around you, what people are saying. We live in some really interesting, confusing times where you turn on the news and you hear Brampton, another person stabbed, another person shot, somebody jumped out of a car, road rage, rah. So you have to kind of keep your wits about you and sort of be prepared for whatever might happen. Now, not just talking about, when it comes to matters of physical security, where somebody might, attack you or try and rob you or carjack you, but also situationally aware about the way people are speaking around your wife and kids. Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think that, and I like that, Blair, because I think a lot of men have become very docile. Men don't even know what's expected of them, what's required of them, and they've taken this back seat here again because I think of trepidation and fear. But, the Bible is very clear. God identifies himself over 2,000 times as a man, never as a woman, and that's not to be offensive. And of course, we know that both men and women come from God. But God chose, to identify as a male. And, now we have, whether it's songs or people, God as a woman, and, that's complete trash. But here again, it's the whole confusion. And I think it's all an affront on God, right? It's an affront on, we're not going to be made in your image. We don't want to identify with you. And so we still have a responsibility in the eyes of God to be men, whether it's in security or whether it's in morality. We still need to follow biblical principles. That is the plumb line. That's what God requires of us. What do you think, Luis?
So I think that, yes, we do have a responsibility with our children, but there's also a responsibility, just like what Blair says, outside. Yes, it's very disrespectful to have people swear and stuff like that outside. But also, I think that we have to identify ourselves and be known as the leaders. There's certain instances where if daddy says no, then they'll go to mommy. Mommy says yes, and then there's that. Well, mommy said yes. Daddy says no. It's got to be on the same page with mommy, and it's no is no, right? I think there's a lot of that going on with families, and that's why these kids are all over the place. Because one party says yes, one party says no. So I think it's very important to communicate with your wives. I'm preaching to myself right now as well, and just keep that communication, because the devil likes to split that relationship. And once he splits that relationship, then it divides the kids, right?
Yeah. So two-part question here. Talking about, masculinity, manhood, different traits that we wish we would see. First question, kind of general, more having to do with society and culture. If you would think there's one masculine trait that needs to return to society, what would that be? And I'm going to follow that question up with, if there's a masculine trait that you need, or you wish and you believe needs to be seen in the church once again, what would that be? So the first one having to do more with society.
I think it was kind of building on what Pastor Tony was saying is, men have become docile. I think the most masculine thing is, I think, at least what my wife is taught, is confidence. Confidence. Speak up. You have a voice. And I think for some of us, for anybody that has a voice, we should use it. We should speak up. So, who you are, whose you are. You have identity in Christ. That should be confidence enough. If he is with me, who can be against me?
Yeah, I have to agree with that. And I also think, the trait that has been lost with men culturally, society through time changes, is that of a protector. You see too many, I see men a lot now, I'm going to go back to standing up for stuff, and that's the protector of faith, your family, your culture, being a protector.
Come on.
And I think that's also, key in the church, because, as men, we're the protector of the faith, we're protector of the word, and protector of the house and the kingdom.
Yeah.
And I don't believe there's enough men willing to stand up to be the protector, to be the warrior, the swordsman of the word of the and of the house, and even the families. You see a lot more women taking charge of things, and men are quite happy to sit back and take that back seat. I believe in women. If you want to correct me on this, I'll accept the correction. But a woman loves a man that is able to protect their home, their family. Absolutely. And I think that's something that's lacking today. A man that can stand up and say no or yes, in both home and outside of the home.
Sean, as you're speaking, I love what God said to Joshua, and I believe they're connected. Be strong and courageous. I think that men are called to be strong and to be courageous, and I think that includes confidence and this idea of protector. And the idea of being strong doesn't mean that you necessarily are, hard-headed or difficult to deal with, just, it's my way or the highway. No, I really believe strength of conviction, strength of emotion, strength of morality. Like there's so many weak men. As you were saying, they take this out of weakness, out of fear. They're just refusing to be strong, and God calls us the stronger vessel. So we're called to be strong in faith, in emotion, in mind, and now everything is all about, well, you can be weak, and I understand that we have weak moments or we have weaknesses, but overall, what do strong people do and courageous people? You rise above, you overcome, right? Otherwise, Sean, I think I heard you say, you become an Ahab, and some Jezebel is going to run you. And I think that's the day we're living in. You know, we got a bunch of Ahabs that supposedly are men, but they're weak. They have no confidence. They have no strength. They have no protection. They have no courage. And so, yeah, Pastor Moses, I think we need to be strong. Luis?
I agree 100%. You guys, I mean, there's the strength, and then also along with that is, I think, good leadership to instill in our boys, because I see a lot of boys, you know, and they're growing up in this, you know, world where they can play with Barbies and all that stuff. Like, I remember, you know, always telling Mateo, like, buddy, don't play with like, if he would grab Diana's toy, which is my daughter, I would say, hey, buddy, that's not for you. You know, you're the car guy. My aunt threw a fit. She's like, why wouldn't you let him play with dolls? That's not right. I said, no, listen, in my house, he's not playing with no dolls. And he's always been, you know, trained that way. And even he doesn't drink out of a pink cup, this guy. You know,
Praise
but
God.
that's stuff that I think as leaders we gotta instill, you know, to the boys growing up, so that when they become men.
But see, that's what I mean by strength. So you had a family member that attacked, right? And the strength to say, no, this is my house. These are my values. Here's what I believe. Now, you know, is Mateo going to be all messed up because he played with dolls? Probably not. But that's not the point. The point is there is strength and belief of conviction there. You know, that Luis said, no. I'm gonna make the boundaries here, and this is the way my home. But you see, this is the problem. The moment there's any kind of a challenge, then we cave. And let me say this: I think strengths are different. Like, for example, you know, Luis was at my house. He grabs a couple of ladders. Boom, he's on my roof, my double deck house, and I'm like, I would not do that. I'm just not going up there. But I probably have strengths that he doesn't. So
like
it's not that, you know, it's not that all our strengths have to be the same. But the fact of the matter is that as men, we are made to be strong.
Yeah.
That's the name of that tune.
Yeah. A yes and no question, and then I'll follow it up with another question. Do you feel like, you know, with what we've just talked about here, do you feel society is set up in a way that would help you succeed, help your sons succeed, help your grandson succeed? Do you think society is set up in that way?
Today's society, no, but there's lots of opportunities to teach, you know, say this is right, this is wrong. But the answer is no. Society's not set up for me as a father to make, it doesn't make it easy, I'll put it that way.
Right, okay. Gentlemen?
Yeah, you know, I would agree, Blair. I mean, there's the society as it's set up today, where there's so many confusions, male, female, and everything in between.
Right.
Doesn't make it easy, you know, for young males or young, you know, males to come up and through it. I definitely believe we're erring on a feministic society.
Yeah.
Where it almost gives room to the feminine gender more so the masculine.
Right.
But again, you know, it's that opportunity that Blair speaks of, where we have to train so that they understand. Like, for me, it's kind of hard. I'm kind of removed from that, where my son is an adult, right? And he's very masculine, you know. And to your point, pink is not even an option, right? And I only think about what, you know, should I have a grandson, Pastor? You have a grandson, young Owen. What is the identity of this young man into today's society? And to your point, Pastor Moses, is it set up for them to succeed? Well, I believe it's set up for them to succeed if the identity of the child has been proven.
That's good. That's
right?
good.
If the identity of the child has been proven, you are a man, then you will succeed, because everything else around you is of no essence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? You are a man. God has called you a man, has made you a man, has made you a male.
That's right.
Not to sound chauvinistic or legalistic about it, but as you said, Pastor, God identified himself as a man and has set forth a man to go first. Well, if you don't teach our sons that is the case, they'll always take a back seat in the feminist society. Right? So I think, yes, it's not set up ideally as we see it today, because we have the whole gender movement happening, them, they, and all things in between. But if you speak to that young man from birth and identify themselves as a man and set that identity straight, then I believe succession is inevitable.
Yeah, that's really good. I asked that question because, and I'm glad you brought up the idea of a feminine society, Sean, because we are seeing some of that. We see more and more movies of, female leads, which there was a lack of. And so, there is a need for that women need to be established and their identity needs to be affirmed as well. But I say that to say, we kind of are moving towards a society where the men as the lead figure, the leader, the one in charge, that's kind of being done away with. Is that a problem? Why is that a problem, and how do we combat it?
Well, it is a problem. It absolutely is a problem. And it's, but Pastor Moses, let's be clear, even in movies, it's not so much that they're not the lead, it's that they're the lead as a man. So now we have, Angelina Jolie in Salt and, movies like that, where it's basically, well, anything you can do, I can do better. And it's simply not true. Generally, it's physically impossible. This is why, you see the NFL now wanting to hire all these women. But put a woman down with that 300-pound linebacker and let's see what happens. So you can avoid all the obvious things and say, oh, it's absolutely possible. But the fact of the matter is, it's not absolutely possible, not in every category. But the idea is, no, it has to be in every category. Now, hey, listen, if you're in a fire, okay, and you need a fireman to carry you down to save your life, I don't care if you're male, female, you better be able to carry my body weight. But here again, physically, like how many women can actually do that? But see, we have this idea, well, we just got to fill these roles. Well, by filling some of these roles, then you put other people in danger because you're simply not qualified. But to say this, Pastor Moses, though, this whole idea of, I think it's an assault on God. It's an assault on his image, and that forget how you made us. We're going to do our own thing. That's the spirit of the age. Now remember, and I'm sure all the haters are going to love this, but here's what Paul said. Here's the order. God, Christ, husband, wife, children. That is the biblical order. And people that are watching this that are not of a biblical persuasion are jumping off of roofs right now. That is the order. And this is why society's all messed up, because they don't want to follow that order.
That's good. That's good. Change the lanes here a little bit. Do you think, as fathers, obviously we're talking about Father's Day. We want to affirm, fathers. But even as fathers, as you think about being leaders, being the men in charge, being the spiritual head, do you think it's important that you see yourself first as God's son before you see yourself as their father?
Well, yeah. You can't give what you don't have.
Yeah.
Right? You can't father if you're not willing to be fathered.
Right, that's good.
So, Father's Day, for the men that are feeling inadequate, get a hold of God. Let the love of Father prove you so that you can prove your fatherhood to your children. I think you have to allow God to be daddy.
Yeah.
And you have to let God, chasten you when you're wrong and set you straight when you go off the rails. Because if you do it without God, then it's carnal. There's no essence to it. There's no sustenance to it. So being a father, to Richard, I had to come to the place of understanding who Father God was in order for me to father my son in the way that God would want me to father him. You know what I mean? So I really believe that you need God the Father to understand fatherhood, to understand compassion, and even in discipline. There's a strong hand, and then there's the abusive hand, right? So if you're going to discipline in abuse, well, that's not biblical. That's not Father. Christ doesn't discipline us in abuse. He disciplines us and chastens us in love. So we need to understand that love of the Father in order to project it to our kids, to our wives, to our families, and everybody that we bring, even spiritually, like, spiritual sons. Understanding that grace, the compassion to have for young people going through troublesome times, but understand that first you've received it so you can give it.
That's good.
Right?
I've learned through my relationship with my kids, being a father has taught me, wow, how much more does Father God love me than I love my own kids. And to Sean's point with discipline and being that strong hand, not an abusive hand, I want to bless my kids. I tell my kids all the time, I beg them to be good, because I say, I want to bless you. I want to give things to you. I hate taking things away from you because, one, it doesn't feel good, and two, I don't want to spend all that money on something and then take it away from you, But yeah, I think the more, you encounter situations with your children from a young age and as they get older, when it comes to disciplining them and being the right example, it's really, really important to draw near to God and seek His guidance, His wisdom, and say, "Look, you're my Father. How would you do this?"
Yeah. Luis, what do you think there, bud? So, for me, it's I've had an exceptional father myself. Growing up, so much sacrifice. Just a hardworking man. Put in so many hours and always being there, So I take that example, and I understand that not everybody can live that, right? Obviously, there's circumstances with single moms and whatnot. But even a spiritual father, like Zab has poured in so much into me that helps you grow. And then when they download that to you, you can now give off. Right. So to your point, right, you can't give what you don't have. Right. So once you start experiencing that love, then you can start giving that love. And even I think that, trying not to be that hard hand all the time. Right. When you get home, you don't want your kids to be scared of you. You want them to be able to approach you. Right. So I think, just being approachable is huge in fatherhood.
But I want to say something to what Sean was talking about, because I think as followers of Christ, we should be exceptional fathers and exceptional men. However, because we're made in the image of God, I know a lot of non-Christ followers. They're good fathers. They're good men because there's something innate in us that comes from God Himself, being made in His image, that you just know. Now, not all of them, some of them are deadbeats and what have you, but those that have some understanding, even if they're not Christ followers, Pastor Moses, there's this, hey, this is what it means to be a man. This is what it means. Now, it's becoming more and more rare, but I think it's still there. And Luis, you're right. We don't, you don't need to be the Neanderthal and I'm king here and I rule and all that kind of, maybe some of that old school that needed to be adjusted. So how do we still have leadership, strength, and all the things we talked about earlier, and understand that, we need to be present, we need to be loving, we need to also be nurturing. Like, I'm very nurturing to my grandson. Like, I love my grandson. I tell him all the time. And yet, I'm always establishing his identity. You're a little man. You're a boy. And by the way, I want, you're talking about dolls. All this guy, if he sees a bus, a truck, I take him out for a walk, and, there's construction going on around his house. He's just, I don't have to tell him, hey, look, that's a bulldozer. You know what I mean? There's something about him that goes, and, he points at it. And I go, that's a boy. You're a boy. You know what I mean?
I love it. I'm going to ask you guys to share a moment that you've either had with your natural father or, a man that you looked up to that really made an impact in your life, in your manhood, in your leadership? And why was it impactful?
You know, let me start. My dad's gone on to be with the Lord. I remember being on Eglinton, that's in Toronto, and Carolyn was pregnant with our first daughter. You know, we're this young family, and, you know, I was just starting my career. And my dad, you know, we lived in this flat. And so I remember being in the car, and for some reason, my dad thought kids could not be born or raised. I hate that word, but, you know, he goes, in a flat. He goes, you need a house. If you're gonna have children now, you know, you gotta have a house. That was, and I was like, okay, you know, and but then he said something to me. He said, you know, and I'm gonna help you, and I'm gonna help you get this house because your children, you know, you got a beautiful brand new house. He says your children have to be born in a house, you know, and when he said that, something fired courage in me. Something fired like just a faith that go get this house and I'm going to help you. In other words, I'm going to make sure you don't fail. And just knowing that about my dad, and my dad was very entrepreneurial. My dad never made a lot of money, but always was able to get whatever he put his mind and his heart to. And that he just in that moment he instilled, and we got a house, by the way, and we never looked back. I probably wouldn't have taken that step had he not said. And by the way, the housing market was a lot different back then, right? but just making that step to say, and you know what? At the end of the day, like he never gave me money or anything like that. It was what he gave me was, this is what you need to do, and I'm going to make sure you don't fail.
There was a couple things in my dad was what I'd call a tender warrior. Like he was an animal inside, like a monster, but he bottled it. And you would never know it because he was so kind and tender and soft-spoken. And I remember two things, and I can remember certain instances, but I'll just sort of paraphrase it. Two things that really impacted me that I remember, where I really had this respect for my dad, and I remember them. And it was, one is when my dad kissed my mom. I got to see how a husband should treat a wife and be affectionate in the right way. And I just something every time, and my sister too. Like we'd see dad kiss mom, and he'd pull her in close and hug her and give her a big smooch, and we were just like, yeah, dad, yeah, attaboy. And the other is when he would stand up to bullies, because he was a business owner. He ran a service station, and you know, you get all kinds of people who are sort of roughneck, and they would, you know, speak certain ways and blah 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 blah. And he would tell people, watch your mouth, or people would try and take advantage of his good nature, and he would get up in their face, and they would never do it again. So he was you know, affectionate in the right way with his wife and his kids, set the right example. And he had a voice. He would stand up to bullies. He was a tender warrior, like tender man, soft-spoken, nice guy. But there was something underneath, under the surface, that was ready to come out and pounce if it had to.
Love it.
So my dad, one thing that will always resonate in my heart, he went through a bad investment, but buying a condo with my uncle on Jane and Steeles, and it was just a horrible apartment. At the time, I was maybe 3, 4. So he came out of that he declared bankruptcy at that stage. And then growing up, you know, because he was always, you know, always provided, always, never complained about that bad decision or whatever. And then I remember one time going to church, and he went to the bank first, and I walked with him into the ATM, and he pulled out, I don't know, some cash. I guess it was his tithe. And my mom was just like looking at him like, Jose, you know, all these bills coming, all this stuff coming, and you're borrowing money to tithe now. And my dad said, yes, this is the Lord's, you know, always. And then, so I come in, and I'm like, I'm listening to the argument in the car, And then my dad faithfully puts the card in and, you know, his ties. And then I always looked up to that. I always looked up to him trusting in the Lord in that sense that, yeah, I'm in debt. I'm not, there's not this much money in the account that I can just give, you know, freely. And he always had that trust, and God has blessed him beyond. Now he's got 4 grandchildren, my sister's 2 and my 2. Amazing. And he's built this, you know, God has blessed him multiple times. But yeah, that's one thing.
So good. Sean?
Yeah, I had an interesting childhood, I guess you could say that. You know, I knew who my dad was. He was always present, but he was a man very filled with conviction. And there was really no there was no gray area with my dad. It was black and white. He was a sergeant major in the army, so very disciplined. And a very, you know, intense businessman. My dad was in finance and stuff, and so, you know, it was his dream and it was his mandate that I would always go into business. And I rebelled and I went into aviation. Well, that's another story. We don't have time for that. But, you know, he was very, you know, set in his way with things. And I never really knew my dad as a dad where you could sit and talk, go fishing and stuff. You know, my dad was one that, you know, where we growing up, you know, in Southern Africa where, you know, being of mixed race, you had to prove yourself. You had to fight for everything, you know, because, you know, Pastor Tony and I was just talking about this before thing, you know, when the white regime was in, the white regime didn't want you, and when the black regime came in, they didn't want you either. So it was a constant fight for proving yourself. And so I really didn't know my dad as dad. He was always working, he was always out of the house. But one thing I admired about him, he was never compromising. And then when I got to know my dad is when we immigrated to Canada. I was 18 years old and he opened a couple of businesses here, and he pulled me aside. He says, son, these businesses are not mine, they're yours. And he says, there's one thing I'm going to teach you. You never compromise your values, your convictions, and your beliefs. He says, if you believe in something, stick with it. If you know it's yours, fight for it. All right? And then I got to know my dad on a more personal basis, playing golf with him, spending time with him. And I remember when he went back to South Africa, Johannesburg, he left me a card, and I still have that card. And at the time, I was very big into martial arts and stuff. And he said to me, and so was he actually, you know, and he wrote in this card, he said to me, a warrior never lays down his sword, he always stands and fights. And that's something he always taught me, was never to give up and never to compromise on your beliefs. And even to this day, he will continuously fight for what's right, for what he believes, and there's no compromise with him. It's black or white, there's no gray area. And that's one thing I've appreciated from him.
Wow, amazing. Well, the reason I asked our panel that question is to let you know, fathers, if you're watching, and future fathers, that what you do, who you are, what you say, how you represent yourself, how you carry yourself makes an impact. And so if these gentlemen can remember things that have happened so long ago, you know, and those moments have made such an impact. You know, I encourage you, your voice matters, who you are matters, your identity as a man, as a father matters and is incredibly, incredibly important. You add value. So I want you to be encouraged by that. Gentlemen, last question very quickly. What do you wish you had when you were a kid that your kids have today?
You know what? Probably the technology. I mean, the technology is just, you know, we used to play with rocks, you know, marbles, you know, wood, you know. Yeah, probably the technology, I guess, of today.
Yeah. I would say not even the technology, just but the accessibility. You know, I mean, we never had access to things that the kids have access to today.
Right. Google.
You know, I mean, yeah, Google, right? I mean, if you wanted to know anything, you had to go get a library card. You have to sift through books, microfiche. Remember that? But accessibility, you know, I think with the accessibility kids have today, sky's the limit. You know,
Amazing.
I would say I put my kids in private Christian school, and I wish I had that.
Wow.
Honestly, I'm glad, honestly, guys, that I I'm glad the internet didn't exist when I was a kid. You know, well, exactly, because I think there'd probably be some pretty incriminating pictures out there somewhere. So no, I don't think there's anything in terms of material or technology or anything that I would want. You know, back when I was growing up, I would have preferred to have had more. I wish I came to more knowledge and understanding of God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit at their age, like they do now.
Like they do now. Louise?
I don't know about you, Pastor Mo. You might be too young for this. He's only a couple years back anyways. But the Walkman that I had, and I wish I could stream music, because I remember rewinding tapes
On a pen.
and then rewinding the tapes. Even VCRs, we had to rewind it when we were done with it, and then we'd watch movies like 100 times. Right. But nowadays everything's on Netflix.
Streaming,
And,
yeah.
I don't know if it's a good thing, because I loved going to Blockbuster and picking out a movie. I don't know if you guys.
Well, then they came up with the thing that would rewind it for you.
Yeah, but you know, that was actually something Rick and I used to actually enjoy, going to Blockbuster and picking out a movie on a Friday night.
So good.
in itself.
Blockbuster.
I think
So good. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For you know.
Thank you for hosting, Pastor Mo.
Absolutely. My pleasure. You guys are incredible, and you guys add value, and I pray that God continues to bless you as men, as fathers, and as grandfathers, and hopefully soon with you too, Sean. Well, listen, thank you again so much for joining us for the Father's Day panel. If you're a father on the other side of that screen, I hope today's program blessed you. And listen, if you know fathers who weren't able to catch this program is going to be on demand, so you can share this with them. It will be up, and so that way they can be blessed. Happy Father's Day once again. God bless you.